Hey guys, welcome to the Apache Podcast. Little update: Tony's still resting and recovering, so he will not be joining with me this week. All right, I will be covering the week ending in 29th and 30th, which is today on a Sunday. All right, let's get started. Okay, so early on this week, I believe this is in the city of Odessa. Yeah. So Russian missile has damaged a cathedral in Odessa. So Odessa has been a very hot city after the grain deal was not extended by the Russian side. So they've been bombarding the seaport city pretty hard. And Zelensky vows retaliation. I believe this was a retaliation from the Russian side due to the bombing of the Kerch Bridge uh, of Crimea. Okay. Next one we have, let's see. So this is kind of interesting. So due to U.S. not having enough officials within Ukraine and overseeing the delivery of donations, military donations and equipment, some of the these military stuff are being ended up in the hands of criminal gangs, armed trafficker, and being sold on the stock on the black market. Me and Tony ourselves have witnessed with our own Ukrainian commander who we will have another story on this later, but we had a Ukrainian commander a major actually, uh, who, we had all these donations coming in, and he kind of just collected them. And the unit, we usually know, what kind of supply that we have access to. And, just some random week goes by, and, we kind of realize that some of our equipments have gone missing. Or, and when we do ask about it, he's saying that he's given it to another unit, but I believe we were told that he was caught selling, heavy firepower equipments and weapons to the black market. An example would be like an AT-4 or even a Javelin system that you could get. Yeah, an AT-4, I think you can probably get maybe 40 to 60,000. A Javelin maybe upwards of 100,000 or so. So it's really sad to see the weapons ended up, but because the U.S. doesn't want boots on the ground, or they don't want to endanger any of the U.S. officials in the accountability of shipping, making sure these military equipment and gear are getting to the right place. There's more I wanted to say about this. I'll think about it when I get to it. Okay, next one we have. So again, Russia said Moscow and Crimea was hit by Ukrainian drone with Ukrainian drone again. So this has been a common theme, and you see, the viewers and you guys will see this is a very common thing that's going to happen more and more often, where you have to hit where it counts. Hitting the front line, sure, you you get some advancements. But if you hit, even a show of force, and even if, the drone gets shot down, it's still a scare tactic to scare the residents that's in the region, in the Kremlin or the Moscow region. Let's see what I have here. So due to the retaliation of the Kerch Bridge, and after Russia has have pulled out of the grain deal that was orchestrated by Turkey, Ukraine, and Russia. And I believe this week Zelensky called the NATO alliance meeting to see if they can solve the Black Sea grain extension, because the Russians have constantly bomb and attack the seaport Odessa, and destroying these grain silos and these stockpiles of grain that are being stored in the city. And I believe I don't have this on a slide on the link, but there's also talks on potential F-16 or I think the Ukrainian wants the F-16 as some sort of like a bodyguard for these ships to safely kind of guide the grain ships to and from the Black Sea region. So I don't know if that's kind of a one way of asking for the F-16s. But speaking of F-16s, I believe potentially this week, I think it's Sweden and maybe Denmark and the Netherlands are partnering to start training the Ukrainians on F-16 pilots. So that'll be good to see. And probably after the training, it'll be hopefully the delivery of F-16s will follow suit. Okay. Next one we have is a Russian colonel, Yevgeny Vashunin. He was killed. He was in charge of the Leningrad regiment. I don't know if I have too much about him, but let me see if I have. There we go. So I was just reading on how many these higher officials have been killed and captured. So a number of Russians have been killed during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So I know Wikipedia is not the best source, but nobody really have an answer. So this is just an estimate, a general estimate. Ukraine sources claim that 15 Russian generals have been killed during the invasion, while Russian sources have confirmed 6 deaths. So about half of, or less than half of what Ukrainians is claiming. The loss of even 2 generals is rare. It's true. I do know that the Ukrainians as well, I believe, but I do know that Russians do not really view their generals as I'm sure they might have extra responsibility and extra duties, with their role that they are in, but I believe they're still just another body that the Russians can use, can throw at the front line to advance their agenda. Yep, so this has been attributed to Russian senior commanders going to the field to address difficulties in command and control and faltering Russian performance on the front line. So, when people are being replaced left and right on the Russian and Ukrainian side, whether due to treason or the lack of ability to do their job properly. So these are some of the names. I believe on the bottom it says how many officers were killed also. Where did I see that? So the Japanese government have estimated that 20 Russian generals have been killed. So that's even more than the Ukrainian have estimated, which I'm not sure how the Japanese would know more, especially when the Ukrainians are are in the middle of it. Okay, so the Independent, I believe, is a Kiev news agency. By the end of April, at least 317 Russian officers have been killed. A third of them are majors, lieutenant colonels, and colonels. I'm not sure if this really says anything about how many. I believe maybe 330 total. So the Times counted 5 Russian colonels killed, but they don't really say how many generals were killed. So, okay. Let's see if we've got the next one. Okay. So these are the nuclear watchdog. So International Atomic Energy Agency experts have observed directional anti-personnel mines on the periphery of the site of the Ukrainian Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I believe they've sent the watchdog about maybe 2 to 4 weeks ago or so to kind of scout out, and because Russian is saying one thing and Ukrainian is saying another thing, and both countries are at each other's on bombing this nuclear power site, and the Ukrainians are claiming that Russians have mined this nuclear power facility and potentially blaming the Ukrainians for if the Russians I guess trying to blow the nuclear power plant, they're going to blame the Ukrainians and say that they did it. So, but as of right now, and probably for a good while, the Russians have control over the nuclear power plant. Recent days and weeks, the IAEA expert present at the power plant have carried out inspections, regular walkdowns, without seeing any heavy military equipment. Yep. So this is the first time I'm also reading it with you guys. I'm mostly just researched the headlines and put it together for you guys. But so they found what's funny is they found the anti-personnel mines in a restricted area that not your regular personnel does not have access to. So it's an area controlled by military, and it's a military decision. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. Lithuania has approved a 3-year plan for military support for Ukraine. So I think Lithuania is one of the Baltic countries. So they definitely know what it feels like to be under Russian control. So the support will be roughly 200 million euros, which is a pretty good amount for Lithuania. So Lithuania has set 3 goals here as follows: continue to make effort to ensure the continuous provision of military support to the Ukrainian army. Okay, ensure the rehabilitation of wounded Ukrainian servicemen, so be able to help and repatch up the wounded Ukrainian soldiers. Continue consultation on defense reforms, which were started even before the full-scale war to bring Ukraine closer to NATO membership. So I'm assuming, I guess what this means is that there are a couple of reasons why NATO membership isn't offered to Ukraine yet. Is due to its current state, that it's at war, and also just the country itself. I believe the country itself has to do a lot of fix up before um, NATO would actually extend an invitation um, that Ukraine can apply. But I do note that during the last couple NATO summit, there have been heavily talks on potential invitation to NATO, but there has been some hesitant from a few countries that um, that because Ukraine is at war, if they were to get accepted to NATO, that would activate the NATO Article 5, which I think it's like an attack on one is an attack on all. So everybody is kind of obligated to pretty much bring down Russia at Russia. Okay. Next one, Trevor Reed. So this one is an interesting one. And I didn't know about that he was being held in a Russian prison for some time. An American Marine. And so I believe he went back right after he was released. In 2022, he was released, and I believe he participated in the Ukrainian war. And so he is currently, I believe he got injured, and he's recovering in Germany. He flew, or they flew him to Germany for recovery. Yeah, Reed is currently receiving medical care in Germany after being evacuated. So it's a German NGO, non-government organization, whatever that is, and Israeli. So there's been multiple talks on the White House publishing, where we don't really know what his condition is. I'm sure they do, but they haven't mentioned what his injury conditions were, or how he is recovering. And similar to what not what I went through, but the process of going to Ukraine was that the State Department heavily against any American or U.S. passport holders visit Ukraine and or participating in any way. And I believe they are continually to support that. Not have any American individuals to go over there besides on your own accord. So give me 1 second. Okay. Let's see. I might have to make a quick phone call here. Okay. Okay. So he's recuperating quickly and hopes to be home soon. Okay, so he was in a prisoner swap in April 2022. Okay. So there's still a couple more Americans that are being held captive in Russia right now. Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich. I'm gonna do research on that name. That doesn't sound like an American name. Sounds like a Russian name. Okay, the next one we have. Okay, so we have the Russian delegation is visiting North Korea. So this one would be, I find this one pretty hysterical actually. So North Korea says that it fully supports Russia's battle for injustice as it shows off a nuclear-capable missile to Moscow's defensive chief. So I don't understand the purpose and the reason behind Russia's visitation to Pyongyang, North Korea. Let me see, what do I have? So a Chinese delegation also showed up, and the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. So they are arriving for North this week for 70th anniversary of the end of Korean War, which is celebrated in North Korea as Victory Day, or I'm assuming Independence Day. But I'm assuming due to the Russians' isolation on the world stage, North Korea, you kind of have to ally with whoever you can get. So North Korea, China, Iran are some of the few that they are aligning together. So for North Korea, the arrival of the Russian and the Chinese delegation marks its first major opening to the world since the COVID pandemic. And Shoigu, the defense minister, gave Kim a letter from the Russian president. I thought Shoigu was I thought he was supposed to be retired after Belarus orchestrated the deal with the Wagner chief, but I guess he's still working. I think he went into hiding for a little bit as well. So, okay. So the letter says, expressed his view on the issues of mutual concern in the struggle to safeguard the sovereignty, development, and interests of the two countries from high-handed and arbitrary practice of the imperialist, and to realize international justice and peace, North Korean media said. Okay. So Russian and the Chinese delegation showed up in North Korea. Okay. So this is just a little bit of update on the drone that is being utilized to attack Crimea and Moscow. So there was a interview with one of the drone individuals that's within Ukraine, and saying that what's different about the war, this specific war, versus every other war that he has witnessed, from the past. And he said that the drones are they're a major game changer in this war, because back then you're not putting any bodies in harm's way, and these drones can be manufactured and mass produced, at a much cheaper than a conventional industrial aircraft for reconnaissance and potentially being armed to have a payload. Here he says that more than 40 Ukrainian companies have contracts to develop drones for use in the war against Russia. So they are Shmiho appeared at a forum making the first anniversary of the Army of Drone project that brought together Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicle manufacturers. So, what was also interesting is due to the bombing of the Kerch Bridge of the unmanned, I think they're surface vehicles, USVs. So, and they're small. They're very difficult to detect by those frigates and those destroyers that the Russian operates out of the Black Sea, and they can have you can put I forgot what it was. I think it was 700 pounds of TNT onto one of those ships and just and have it go full speed at a Russian ship. It can do some serious damage to them. Okay, let's see if I can check this. Okay, here's another one. Okay, so delegations from Russia and China, North Korea's key ally in the Korean War, gathered in Pyongyang this week to celebrate North Korea's Victory Day in the war that ravaged the Korean Peninsula, the DMZ zone. 7 decades ago, that outlined over another very contemporary conflict, Russia's devastating invasion of Ukraine. Okay. I'm trying to find the letter that Putin sent to Kim. Okay, well, I guess I can't find it. Moving on. I think the letter, I think I read it somewhere that said that Putin was thanking the North Korean for its support and its rightfully method, I guess, of protecting of its sovereign territories. And here I have, so while Russia and China prepare to hold talks with PRK regarding its support military and its goal to protect its sovereign territories, it could imply that the territory that Russia illegally seized, such as the 4 Ukrainian regions and Crimea included. There was another report that I read today that the Ukrainians were using North Korean rockets. So I don't know how the Ukrainians are getting the North Korean rockets, but hey, I like it. But yeah, so I'm assuming that it could have been, me and Tony had a couple theories that either it was stolen, or not stolen, but it might have been attacked and seized in the Black Sea, because whatever aircraft that was going in and out of the Black Sea from the Ukrainian and Russian side, it was viewed as a military, it could potentially and carry in military cargo. So the Ukrainian could have taken over one of the cargo ship that was meant for Russia that had Ukrainian rockets. On top of donations, speaking of donations, China have also donated $12 million worth of drones and drone parts to Russia. However, the Chinese, the CCP, have said that they have not donated any military and strictly staying neutral. I'm not sure So they have said that they have not donated any military parts or any military donations to Russia after the invasion. It was only for before the invasion. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on there with that one. Okay. Next one we have is, so Biden is allowing the U.S. to share evidence of Russian war crimes with International Criminal Court. So the ICC and the U.S. are actually not partnered. They are actually two separate. They do not operate together. However, with how much the U.S. intelligence is involved in the Ukrainian war, and they are able to oversee a lot more than most countries is able to. So the International Criminal Court it will be partnered with the U.S. to gather and analyze intelligence that is in the between the Russians and Ukrainians. Speaking of ICC court, I'm not sure if I covered this, but last week it was last week Russia have decided Russian President Putin have decided not to attend the African delegation summit in August this upcoming month because South Africa is a part of the ICC court, and they are obligated to enforce the ICC arrest warrant that is set out for Putin and another individual. I think it's Maria. I don't know her full name, but I know it's Maria something something. And it is being. I think the arrest warrant is for human trafficking, specifically children. Human trafficking of children from Ukraine into Russia. Okay. And war crimes. Let's see if there's anything here. Okay. Okay, so it would be the first time that the U.S. has agreed to share evidence with the court. That's interesting. So neither the Russia or U.S. is part of the court. Okay. Oh, I do find this one pretty cool. So the Ukrainians have finally, I believe after several months of slow offensive, counteroffensive, they have finally reached a breaking point of the Russian defense line, and they have finally were able to break the defense line and enter, I think, like just a new stage. They have ramped up their resources and instead of just kind of throwing people and equipment, they have decided to just stay back and just do more of a heavy artillery to soften the Russian side. So they have, let me zoom in on this. They have reached so there's these concrete triangular things that's called dragon's teeth. So the dragon's teeth are lines that they lay through deep roads to stretch for hundreds of miles on either of the concrete lines. So these are just anti-tank. They're more of a blockage than anything that they have to go through. But because Russians have multiple months to fortify, because the counteroffensive have been televised to the world, so they know that it was coming. I found this. I saw this on today. So China is also providing technology and equipment to Russia that is increasingly important to Moscow's war, similar to semiconductors. I believe that's one of the. Okay, so here's another one. So it says that as of March, China has shipped more than 12 million named drones and drone parts to Russia. So navigation equipment, jamming tech, fighter jets parts, semiconductors as well, exports from China to Russia. So, China is one of the only way that Russia kind of is going around the sanctions that the U.S. and UN has imposed on them. Okay. Let's see, where am I here? So Putin searches for more friends in Africa summit. So the African delegation have come together to meet, hosted by Putin in St. Petersburg, trying to, I believe the agenda was to, similar to what the agenda was a couple months ago, was to have a 10-point peace plan. I know that didn't go well, but also hold discussions on the grain deal and potentially come to the table for talks. And I believe that they've mentioned. So one of the point was that was consistently being said was Putin was, he's not completely neglecting the peace talks, and almost blaming the Ukrainian side for not coming to the table. But Zelensky, I think one of the major point in Zelensky said, for us to have peace talks, you must withdraw all troops from Ukrainian territory, which is a pretty reasonable. I don't know whether a ceasefire can be a discussion, but so African delegation and its community is desperate to reach a deal regardless of the stages of the war due to its dependency on the Ukraine grain shipment, which can cause humanitarian crisis, especially to developing countries. And one way that Russia is, I guess they're trying to soften the blow a little bit by shipping, I don't know, I think it was 20 to 30 million tons of grain to Africa free of charge. So good for them, I guess. So I wanted to see what happens. Secretary of State Blinken pressed African leaders to demand answers from Russia. Going back to what I said last week, one of the only way that Russia would come to agreement on potentially extending the grain deal was lifting its international exchange system, or SWIFT, so they can trade and do transactions on the world stage. Okay. And at the same time, Prigozhin, this is the first time Prigozhin is seen in public at the African Delegation Summit in St. Petersburg. Since the rebellion, for me, it's kind of, I was confused by, I didn't really care where he was, but I do know that they were trying very difficult to push a mutiny and march into Moscow. So, and the and I believe Belarus president was trying to hide him in some ways, make sure that he wasn't seen in public's eye. And I believe that, and could be that they are trying to avoid the Russian officials from finding out and potentially having, a consequence on the Wagner chief and Wagner delegation or Wagner group as a whole. Give me 1 second. Okay, I just have to send a text there. Okay, the next one I have. So Wagner PMC's mercenary is headed to the Suwalki corridor connecting the territories of the Baltic country with Poland. Over 100 mercenaries of the Wagner PMC went to Suwalki corridor, which connects the Baltic state with Poland and separates Russia's Kaliningrad region from Belarus. So there's been thousands of Wagner group poured into Belarus and training training Belarusian army, and the presence of Wagner on the border between Russia, Poland, Belarus have an increased presence. I think I have a map also. Whoops. Yep. So here's the corridor. So here's Poland, a NATO member, Lithuania, a NATO member. And then here's Kaliningrad, which is kind of on its own little region. And here's Belarus. So I believe around this area is where the built-up and potentially crossing into as well. So, okay, let's see if I have something else here. So Ukraine have brought the war to Kremlin's doorstep. Zelensky said that people think that this war does not affect them and wants to show them that it is affecting you. So this was today. Another, I think it was three drones that were maybe two drones that were shot down that was trying to enter the Moscow airspace. There's always something flying in Russia as well as in Moscow. Now the war is affecting those who are not concerned. A third one to shut down in the air. Ukrainian officials have not claimed yet. Yep. Let's see if I have something else. There's one thing that I wanted to share. I'll make a separate video on this, but that'll be all for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Apache Podcast. See you guys next week.